another episode of the Strength and Speed podcast. Want to do a quick episode. But first, quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Manscaped. If you haven't checked out Manscaped, please do. They are the premium male hygiene grooming products. They've got shavers, they've got deodorant for downstairs, they've got boxers, they've got all sorts of great trimmers. Can't express how awesome they are. I just started actually checking them out and testing them out. I should have a review coming soon on either the OCR Report or OCR Buddy. Not sure who I'm publishing through, but I'll dive deeper into that. But they are a great product. We've got a code for you guys. It's ultra-ocr. Again, that's ultra-ocr. And that gives you, I believe, 15 or 20% off plus free shipping. You can head over and check out manscaped.com. Again, that code is ultra-ocr. And you can head over and use that at manscaped.com. Also want to do a quick shout out to some other podcast sponsors. Yoked, I've talked about them before. Use code STRENGTH20 to save 20% on every order from Yoked. And new, The Feed. The Feed is a supplement, essentially distributor. They've got all the great stuff from all your favorite brands, including Hammer Nutrition. So huge fan of them. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes below. Please click on that to go through the feed and shop around. The cool thing is you can buy from multiple different brands simultaneously. You don't have to go to this website and then that website and then the other website. Thefeed.com. Do all of your shopping there. Get it all done. They were a huge sponsor of the Tour de France for several years. They may still sponsor them. I haven't watched the Tour de France in a hot minute, but they are what the athletes were getting kind of on course. Just a mix of great products. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. Again, I'm Strength and Speed owner and Muddy Your Handlebar Race Pro over Paris. I get on a plane in less than 24 hours to head to Al Ula, Saudi Arabia for the biggest prize purse in OCR history for the 8-hour Tough Mudder Infinity event. So before I get on the plane, I wanted to share some thoughts, some predictions, some concerns people were having, a little bit about my journey. So I'm just going to knock this out, this quick episode, just me today. Don't have a guest. All right, first off, why did I wait till last minute to announce that I was going? The Army, in order to get approval to go overseas, especially some Middle Eastern countries, you need special approvals, and the amount of paperwork I had to do and hoops I had to jump through to get that approved, and I had to submit it twice. Lots of long story, lots of dragging the feet. It eventually got approved. It was pretty late in the game. Luckily, I've been working with some great brands over the years, and they helped me cover a lot of the costs to getting there and competing and racing over in Saudi Arabia. So before we go any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people at Tough Mudder, the people at Tough Mudder Arabia and CAB Sports, CAB Sports. They're like the event hosting company that's putting on, specifically Stephanie and Nick, who helps kind of make things happen behind the scenes. So I wouldn't be going out over there without their support. So huge shout out to them. Also, Matt B. Davis from the Obstacle Racing Media podcast and Obstacle Racing Media. He's been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes athlete liaison work between a lot of the organizers of the event and actually the athletes. So shout out to him too as well. For those of you who are looking for in-race coverage, right, you want to follow the race as it's happening, see the updates. Obstacle Racing Media is going to be your best bet for that. Hands down, they've got the most kind of number of people on the ground who are not racing, so they will actually be covering and producing content from the race as it's happening. Historically, I don't produce that much content for Obstacle Racing Media, although I have done some of it in the past. I usually work with OCR Buddy or the OCR Report, so I am going to produce some content for them pre and post race. So if you want to see what the travel experience is like, jumping planes and all the Middle Eastern culture on my way to the Saudi Arabia race, I'm going to publish that on Ultra OCR Man, my Instagram channel, and then also some of that through OCR Buddy. Once I physically get to the race venue, I'll do some interviews on the ground with some of the athletes, some of my friends, maybe some people I've never met before, some famous people. I mean, OCR famous. I'm using air quotes, right? We have some famous people, but I feel like just the OCR people care about who they are. So I'm going to do some interviews with them. I'm going to push that through the OCR Report. So you'll be able to find that in their stories, on their main page, and on their reels. So lots of different brands kind of working together for this. Again, with the prize purse being so huge, we want to get this event out there to as many eyes as possible. So I'm all about working across multiple brands to make sure this event gets a lot of exposure, and hopefully it gives that big enough demand signal where next year Saudi Arabia and Tough Mudder Arabia are like, yeah, let's definitely do this again. This was huge. It was a great exposure, a massive event, landmark moment in sports. Let's do it again next year. I think a lot of Americans, when they look at the race, they're like, well, how is this going to make any money? You look at the prize purse that's being given away, which is first place for each gender. This is for each gender, $80,000. Second place, 32,000. Third place, 16,000. And then it continues to drop 7,500, 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, 2,500, 2,000, 1,500 for a top 10 placement. Then there's also a fastest lap per gender with a $5,000 prize purse. Plus, they're playing out 3 deep in the 4-man and 2-man categories. That's split between two people. So first place 20,000 divided by 2, second place 8,000 divided by 2, third place 4,000 divided by 2, and then for the 4-person team, first place 40,000 divided by 4, second place 16,000 again divided by 4, and then third place 8,000 divided by 4. So I mean the prizes are just, and it's just astronomical. It is insane. So the first thing to note about that fastest lap prize is that's a $5,000 payout. That's better than most OCRs that I can think of for payouts. So that first lap is going to be absurd. Get ready for it. People are going to go out so hot. It is going to be insane trying to win that $5,000 prize purse. And I mean, realistically, there's a bunch of people, not me, I'm not that fast, who will show up and just try to burn it down for those first couple of miles, right? Just to get that $5,000 prize purse and then basically give up at that point, right? Because that's a much easier payday than racing for 8 hours, right? Putting out a hard, less than probably 30 minutes of work at the pace some of these guys are going to be running. So what are we going to see? We're going to see the first lap super, super fast. I mean, unbelievably fast. And then after that, just like most endurance races, people will start settling into their pace. But again, with the prizes being so big, again, people are going to be pushing it. They're going to be pushing it to the red line throughout the whole race. So who's going to win? I mean, we have to give initial credit to Ryan Atkins. The man has never lost a race that is 8 hours or longer. He's never lost an ultra OCR, right? I'm ultra OCR man, but he is by far the king of ultra OCR, right? He's undefeated since 2013. That is a decade of ultra OCR racing without losing. And that's not winning like the little small race too, right? He's going to the World Championships, Spartan 24-hour ultra, World's Toughest Mudder multiple times. He puts it down. The 8-hour races when they were on CBS, he was at all those. And then the 8-hour racers the year after when they weren't on CBS. So some of them, like our World's Toughest was on CBS that year. But again, has not lost. So you have to put him in there, if not first. He has not been racing that much OCR, but he has been doing a lot of other training. And I don't, for an 8-hour race, I don't think he's lost that much. Just my 2 cents. And again, this is just Evan's opinion. I like Ryan a lot. So, but yeah, where I think we get into trouble is 8 hours. I don't think is long enough for Ryan Atkins. It's not long enough for me either. So you will not see me in the top 5. If I manage to somehow squeeze into the top 10, that would be, honestly, it would be a miracle. Maybe everyone else blows up. Who knows? But I'm kind of expecting myself significantly lower, probably closer to the high teens. Just my prediction. I could be wrong. I'm obviously going to go out there and push it as hard as I can and see what I can come up with. But historically, for me, 8 hours is a little on the short side. I always tend to do better. 12 hours like my sweet spot. So a couple more hours, I think I'd be a little more competitive. And then 24 hours, again, for me personally, is a little bit too long. I tend to slow down compared to some of my peers at the 24-hour range. But 12 hours is my sweet spot. Enough about me, though. Let's talk about some of the other athletes that are gone, right? So Ryan Atkins, obviously, got to give him credit. Jonathan Albon, right? I mean, I don't know. I've lost count the number of OCR World Championships events he's won. So he's obviously going to be up there. And I think with this only being 8 hours, I think it could play to his advantage over Ryan, perhaps. And then we look at the list of other male athletes. I'm going to primarily focus on the males for now. You look at the other male athletes that are going. Mark Botras, previous World's Toughest Mudder winner. DJ Fox, previous World's Toughest Mudder winner. Austin Azar. And a lot of names we haven't seen in a while at the kind of the endurance toughest event. Sean Stevens Whale. Andrew Losh, another up and comer. Joshua Reed. I feel like we haven't seen him in a hot minute over at the toughest events. Anthony Krunkel. So if you remember in 2022 Alabama World's Toughest, Anthony went out faster than I think I'd ever seen anyone go out. He was burning it down, and I think he's going to go out there and set a blistering pace. I don't know if he'll win that $5,000 prize purse. I think he'll come close, if not win that fastest lap. And then I think he's going to push the pace until people start blowing up. My money would be on him at an early lead in the race. I think Ryan Atkins will be a little bit further back in the race, and I think John Albon will be between the two of them. And I'm just speaking off people I know, right? I know there's a lot more people. I'm going to mispronounce his name, but from Australia, Lechelan, I don't know. Danzy, he's the guy who won Tough or Australia, True Good Australia, the 24-hour race. He won it multiple times. He won it the year I went out there in 2017. So I'm sure he's going to be competitive as well. And then this prize purse is so ridiculously large, it's going to attract guys who are just pure runners. They're just going to be pure runners out there. Tough Mudder is not known for the most technical obstacles, and usually the penalties are not super bad. So you could be a pure runner, I think, and you could show up. And if you are elite, top tier ultra runner, I think you'll show up and you will put down a blistering pace. You will put down some significant times and some significant mileage. So kind of rounding out some of my predictions, I think we'll know, again, for the average OCR person who's like in the sport and knows OCR people, I think we'll know about 50% of the names in the top 10. That's just kind of my prediction. I think we're used to seeing all Americans and Canadians at World's Toughest in the top 10 because it's only been held in America. So we get a lot of American athletes. You only get a couple of like foreigners who are willing to make the trip over. But for this, we're getting all sorts of Europeans. We're getting Middle Easterners. We're getting, people from all over the world, basically. So again, I don't think we'll recognize half of the names of the males in the top 5. On the female side, I'm not going to speak too deeply on that, honestly, because as a male and as a competitive athlete, I tend to pay attention to my own competition. I pay less attention to the females, but Chris Rogalowski going, Katie Knight, Lindsay Webster. So that's going to be, and that's just the names I know off the top of my head. It's going to be a fast field for the ladies as well. I think you'll see less women we know in the top 10 as compared to the males. I think you'll get some European OCR athletes maybe that we recognize, but again, probably won't know, 50% of them. And for the people who are only focused on American OCR, I think you'll know, a couple in the top 10, maybe a third of the people in the top 10. Either way, I'm excited. Again, I don't really have a huge expectations for myself personally. I'm 41. I've started to slow down a little bit. I can still throw down most of the times, but it's a lot of these younger kids are coming out fast, and I feel like I need all the time I can to keep up. But there's also teams of 2 and teams of 4 going out there. Honestly, the teams of 2, I don't recognize a lot of the names. Tyler Veerman, I recognize his name, obviously. Chris Brown, they've got a team. So I guess my money's on them. Not sure. A lot of the other names I don't recognize. Again, I think they're going to be some fast Europeans that show up, and they just show up there and they're just putting out an insane pace. Teams of 4, so Obstacle Racing Media only has 5 teams of 4 listed. I'm not sure if these are the elite competitors or if this is everyone that's competing. But if there's only 5 teams of 4, that's pretty good odds of winning money at that point. For the winning team, you got to go with, I think VJ and Leon's team are going to win. I'm not sure about all the guys on his team, but I know VJ Jones is not going to show up with a team of like mediocre or even like he's not going to show up without the best people on his team. I'll just say that. And at 8 hours, even if they're not endurance guys, again, I'm not sure on all these guys' resumes, even if they're not endurance guys, most people who are high-level athletes can fake it for 8 hours because they're running 1 lap, but they're taking a break. They're running a lap, taking a break. The only time they have to run essentially 2 laps in a row is the first 2 laps and the last 2 laps again. And it depends on the order of things and how, who's going when. So you essentially, you need someone to blow up really bad to lose that lead, but I don't think they will. I think they'll have too much of a head start on people. I know Four Locos, again, that's another team, Jake Ramsey's team, that we've talked to. I've had on my podcast before. They usually do really well, but again, they are not. They don't have 100% of their normal guys, so we'll see. I think there'll be a surprise team in there, like again, I don't recognize these names, but the European elite team. I bet you they come, probably in second, and that likely puts Four Locos in third or fourth. We'll see. But hey, it's ultra endurance, so anything can happen. And again, if you have one dude that just blows up really bad or gets significantly injured, well, there goes your team's race. Speaking of teams, I wanted to comment on a lot of the names. So if you listen to this and you're an athlete who races a lot of these like big events, you need to buy my book, The Sponsored Athlete. And you're like, oh, well, Ivan, you're just saying that's because it's your book. No, like I'm looking at these team names, and as far as I can tell, none of them are named after a brand. Listen, I'm largely going to step away from elite OCR in the next couple of years. The best perks I ever got for any races was representing a brand at a world championship event. I mean, I've showed up to World's Toughest Mudder and started the race with more money in my pocket than everyone but the winner of the race, the individual winner of the race, right? So for those of you who are looking, especially the elite side, right, who are looking to cut costs, or even like the average person who's showing up with a competitive team, right? Let's say the average competitive OCR person. So maybe not like you're not going out there winning races every weekend, but you can put out a decent time, and at a good race, maybe you and your team can squeeze onto the podium. Pick up my book, The Sponsored Athlete. Find a company, name the team after the company, and have them comp some of your fees, whether that be entry or travel or even if it's just product, right? Just product that allows you to race for a cheaper cost. And every time I see teams at World's Toughest Mudder, I see teams at Spartan World Championship when they do the team events, or when I see teams at something like this, right, the largest cash prize purse in OCR history, and teams aren't named after brands. I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're literally losing out on money. You're just losing money. So for those of you who are looking to take this more into a more serious realm, one, buy the book, and two, reach out to companies, man. Reach them out. Get someone to cover some of your costs. This is an anomaly. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully this is the start of something great, but this is an anomaly especially over the last couple of years. We haven't had these huge prize purses in the last couple of years. So take advantage of everything we can get while the fire's still hot, both in perks, prize money, whatever else you can get, follow-up sponsorships, right? If you're one of the teams who goes out there, or one of the individuals that goes out there and does well, right? You just finish top 10. If you finished in the money at this race, you need to be getting out and reaching out to sponsors, being like, here's the race I just finished in the top 10 at. Here's how much I made. Please support me. I am a high-level athlete. I'm capable of doing great things. And, this goes out for anyone. I do think the sponsor perks are big enough for the entire elite OCR crowd. Like, I don't think if someone else gets a sponsor, it takes away from my piece of the pie, or really any of the other athletes' piece of the pie. In certain brands, yes, right, if you're both applying to the same brand. But there's so many companies out there that are looking to get their product in front of people's eyes. You may reach out to a company already aligned with OCR, but a lot of times I have better success reaching out to companies who are not in the OCR industry that want to get in, and you can be like, hey, I can help you get into this market. It's full of athletes who are obviously willing to spend money, care about performance, care about looks, look at all the social media posts, blah, 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 blah. Get your foot in the door. Usually recommend starting off with a product sponsorship over money, because product, it's a lot easier to get continuing, and then a lot easier to show your benefit. And I think companies are more willing to accept that because it's part of their seeding the field with their product, versus monetary is like a direct loss for them. So I always recommend trying to go for a product sponsorship first. And if you show value big enough, then you can move on to the monetary sponsorships. All right, final thoughts about like travel over to Saudi Arabia. So I've never been to Saudi Arabia. I've been to other Middle Eastern countries: Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Lebanon, UAE, Jordan. I think that's all of them, maybe. Here's my experiences when I travel to the Middle East. A lot of times in the airports, and as you're traveling over there, people are ruder than they are in the States, right? So like people will like I don't say like overtly push you, but people tend to be less patient. They're, when they call the airport, the boarding zones, people don't just ignore it and they all just get on. So a lot of times people seem ruder. It's like being, I'd say I'm from New York State area, so I'm not from the city, but I've been to the city a lot of times from Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. People are, compared to the Midwest where I live now, people are ruder in New York than they are in the Midwest. And then I would say people in the Middle East at the airports and stuff like that are ruder than they are in New York City, from my experience in New York City. However, once you get on the ground and we are in like the Tough Mudder bubble, and like the Tough Mudder Arabia staff is like, essentially you become guests of the staff and of that town. The hospitality I've received in the Middle East is always the best I've experienced in my entire life. When I've traveled to Kuwait, when I've traveled to Lebanon, when I've traveled to Qatar, and um, they treat you like you're part of your family. It's really nice, and I always feel bad when I go there because I feel like they're treating me better than I deserve to be treated. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. Stuff very similar in Saudi Arabia. I think when we look from a Westerner perspective, we looked at this event. We're like, well, there's no way they're. You look at all the prize money they're giving away, and they're like, there's no way they can make money off this. It's got to be a losing proposition. But I'll say this: the value of holding the largest prize purse event in OCR history and making a big spectacle out of it, and the second, third order benefits, and additional sponsors they can get to support the brand. I don't think will make. I would guess it's still a loss, but I don't think it's as big of a loss as I think people think monetarily. That is, they're going to get a lot of when I work in the Middle East, we call it wasta. It's like clout. It's like pride, value. Essentially, you're like you're a big shot because you have all these athletes from all over the world flying into your city and your country to represent and have like an international event. It's kind of like hosting the Olympics, right? But like a smaller, completely scaled down version of the Olympics. Similar concept, similar publicity, again scaled down, but this is for OCR, right? When we look at Dubai, does Dubai need the world's tallest building? Do they? I don't think they do, but they gain clout, they gain value, wasta, whatever you want to call it, from having that on their property. And you look at a lot of the other stuff, right? They have an indoor ski mountain, completely insane. I think the smart Middle Eastern countries are looking, 50, 100 years into the future, and they're saying, well, who knows how long the oil thing will continue to go, especially with, people keep pushing electric. I don't want to get into like political stuff on that, but there's other fuel sources that people are looking at. And I think the smarter Middle Eastern countries, which mostly like the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, um, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia's in the Gulf Cooperation Council. But anyway, the smarter Middle Eastern countries are looking at a lot of these additional ways to bring in revenue, tourism, hosting events, etc. And I think this is just kind of another coin in that bank. All right, I'm going to get going. I think I ran my mouth enough. That was a lot longer than I was planning on talking. Make sure you follow OCR Buddy, follow the OCR Report, follow my social media, Ultra OCR Man. Check out teamstrengthspeed.com. We've pivoted hard. I want to say pivoted hard. We've added stuff for fighting, right? Tiga Tactics Podcast is now. You can find the links on there for that, which, just like Strength and Speed, publishes twice a month. You can find some religious content on there, which I think you'll find interesting, even if you're not the specific branch of denomination of Christianity. Speaking of which, I'm super excited to go to Saudi Arabia because I've never been to that country, right? And the country is the entire. I mean, that's where Mecca and Medina is. So I'm not going to those two cities, but those are holy sites in Islam. And as someone who's studied religions and been to the Middle East a couple times, to me that's kind of like pretty cool to be in the same country as some of their holy sites. And I'm not Islamic, I'm not Muslim, but I do think it's really cool to be in places that were part of history. Al Ula is it's kind of in the center of the country. I know some people were like, "Oh, what about terrorism and safety and blah blah blah." It is far from the border. It is well inland, and again, we're showing up as guests. I don't think I'm not really concerned about anything happening. That would be like avoiding Texas because there are parts in northern Mexico that are bad. I just think that the distance is too far. The likelihood of something happening is too low. And again, we're guests of Tough Mudder Arabia that's putting on this event. I am expecting the obstacles not to be quite as grand as some of the Tough Mudder we're used to, just because, again, different supply lines in the Middle East, different obstacle builders, etc. So I'm expecting it to be a little bit more of a running race and a little bit less of like technical obstacle race, like kind of like we saw at World's Toughest Mudder this past year. I don't think it'll be anywhere that close to technically difficult. I think it will favor the pure runner, and I think the penalties will not be as bad. Um, just giving that advantage to the guy who's just a very very fast runner, which will be exciting. Again, Anthony Krunkel, John Albin, Mark Botras, Ryan Atkins, and then there's a whole bunch of guys. I mean, the list just keeps getting deeper, but those guys specifically, I remember being at World's Toughest Mudder, and I put down pretty good mileage, right? Usually I get around 90 miles at races at World's Toughest, but those names, Ryan Atkins, Mark Botras, Anthony Krunkel, John Albin, I have specific memories of being lapped multiple times by them and being like, they are moving at an incredible pace, in those first couple hours of the race. And if the race is only 8 hours, they can push that super hard. So it's going to be exciting. I'm really excited I'm excited to be in the race, but then also to hear about what places people are in as the race is going on. So that should be pretty interesting. All right, check out all the social media coverage. I will see all of you in Saudi Arabia or on social media. And yeah, it's going to be huge for our sport. And show some love. Like anything you see about the event, watch it, please. Again, you got to send the demand signal that this is important, and we are paying attention, and they want more eyes so they can continue to do this stuff in the future. Right? This is good for everyone in the sport. The more money that comes into the sport, the more it trickles down to everyone essentially. Not just the elite athletes, right? But if there's more money coming in, they can put more money into obstacles, but you make the events better. Blah 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 blah. Right? Trickles all the way down. I will see all of you online. Have a great night/week/follow along. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. See you out there.